And I now want to expand our perspective even further. Because if our stories are so powerful in our relationships and in small groups, what's the impact of our collective stories on our humanity? And I want to start by taking a step back in history. You see, in the 1950s, I grew up near a small country town, and the population of that town was mostly people of white Anglo-Saxon origin. And without being aware of it, as I grew up, I inherited a number of really unhelpful stereotype stories. Stories about gender and sexuality, about race and disabilities. And amongst the most impactful of those stories were the stories about Indigenous Australians. Aboriginals are lazy and dishonest. They can't be trusted. Whatever you do, don't go near them. So of course I didn't trust them, and I didn't go near them. Now here's the tricky bit. When a story about ourselves is too painful to own, we unconsciously project it onto others to carry it around for us. It becomes our shadow. And that's really problematic. And that's what happened to me with my inherited stories. Too painful to own, they became part of my shadow. And it wasn't until I became aware of them and could bring them into the light that I was able to change them. And here I think lies the challenge and maybe the hope for us as human beings. Because as John Tarrant says, when we face our darkness, other people don't have to carry it around for us. And so how can we face our darkness? Well, in Australia, I believe we have to face the painful truth, the whole truth, of what happened to the first Australian nations after European settlement. And more generally, we've got to start asking different questions. Questions like, what stories are we telling about them? How might they be our shadow? And what stories can we create that connect our stories with theirs and their stories with ours? Because if we don't, we're going to continue to see and describe each other through simplistic, one-dimensional label stories. Labels like black, white, Muslim, Christian, gay, straight, disabled. Labels that do linguistic violence to the rich complexity of who we are as human beings. Labels which are going to perpetuate violence and wars. And you see, this talk isn't about me. This talk is for my children and my grandchildren and their grandchildren. Because I hold deep concerns about the direction we're heading in. And I think we're at a critical point in human history where we have to make a choice. So we can choose to march collectively towards a dystopian future driven by our old stories. Or if we want a better world for future generations, then in our moments of fear and anger and pain, we've got to stop and ask ourselves, whose stories will we choose to live?